I'm gonna basically share a 4-point framework to give diabetics more power to control their condition, to control their blood sugars. But before I get into it quickly, I'll just say, who I am. I'm Amina Goodwin, and I'm an internal medicine infectious disease doctor. And for those of you wondering where this exotic accent is from, it's a Caribbean accent. I'm from the island of Antigua. But I did all my training, specialty training for internal medicine and infectious disease in New York and then New Jersey, respectively. Went home to Antigua for a little bit, came back to the US, to do more. And that was in 2013. And so since 2013, I've been living in Mississippi, taking care of the worst infections in East Mississippi and West Alabama. And then more lately, I'm sort of traveling to help other hospitals in general with their most serious infections. Just wrapped up a 6-month period in Boise, Idaho, actually taking care of some people there in West Oregon as well. But essentially, over the course of my decade plus taking care of diabetics, I noticed that a lot of people were doing what they were told. So a lot of people, they get the diagnosis and they get told, cut your calories, cut carbs, cut sugar. And so they're doing all this, but they're not getting the results that they hope to get. And what happens is that over and over again, their diabetes gets worse, they get on more medicines, they get more complications, and then eventually we see people dying, right? So having worked in the same place as the only doctor taking care of these bad infections for over 10 years, you just see the trend of people getting worse and then family members being lost. And what I realized with all this is that, what the system that people are using to help control the diabetes, and not everyone, right? Because some people obviously do well, but too many people are not doing well, and it's because they have a broken system. So the general advice is focus more on restriction and limitation rather than having people realize, oh, I have the power to do this, right? And I can control in these ways, but it's more kind of taking the power from them, letting them say, take these medicines and take the medicines. And if people are not taking medicines, then it's as if, they get blamed, like you must not be doing something right, you're non-compliant, and there are all these labels in the chat. And so in noticing all this, I realized, okay, we need to do something else. Something else. It can't just be about, not eating sweets and using artificial sweetness in your drinks, right? And so it led me to go back to basically go back to the medical school books, my textbooks, to think about what are the ways that sugar is increased in the bloodstream, right? It's people get it from food, but what else? How else can sugar be increased, right? And one is if you have sugar, but you're not burning it off fast enough. Of course, sugar, glucose, it's an energy source, right? So if you're not using that energy fast enough, then that's one reason for sugar to build up in the bloodstream. Another reason, this is obvious one, if too much sugar goes in, all right? Another is if the sugar, maybe you do restrict, but the little that you take in goes in too quickly, right? And part of a lot of sugar going in too is that the general belief is that only sweet things give you sugar, right? Cause your blood sugar to go up. And there's this misunderstanding that you can actually get sugar from many. In fact, most of the sugar people are getting is probably from unsweet things, the starchy things, the dairy, and then all the additives that are in a lot of processed foods that people are eating, right? The modified starches and all these other things that go into foods like protein type foods and sauces, where you think you're getting protein, you think you're just getting a little condiment, but that thing has up to a third and sometimes even more of starch, right? So there are these hidden sources, right? So sugar entering the body, the blood too quickly, even if it's a little, it might be going in just too rapidly. And then the most overlooked one is probably that your body might be making too much sugar, right? So, and this one was like the hardest one. Well, not hardest, but maybe the hardest one to sort of realize and come to grips that, okay, I'm helping these people, but then, they're still having these problems, and just realizing that there's a lot of stress in life, right? Different reasons to stress, from psychological stress to even chronic stress from chronic inflammatory disorders in the body, and a whole host of other things, right? So in recognizing that, hey, there are multiple causes or multiple reasons for sugar being high in the blood, then that made me realize, oh, well, how can we tackle each of these reasons for sugar being high in the blood? And just for people, because I guess a lot in the group, there'll be a lot of diabetics watching this replay eventually. So just to think about how, sugar enters the bloodstream. If you picture a conveyor belt, like in a factory, there's a conveyor belt and boxes are going on to the conveyor belt to be distributed to where they need to be. So you can think of the conveyor belt as a blood vessel, and then the little boxes could be, think of it as sugar, actual grains of sugar going into the blood or whatever, right? And if as the conveyor belt moves on, or escalate or whatever, things get off of it and get distributed to where they're supposed to be, right? But if for some reason they're not being used up, they're not being taken off the conveyor belt and distributed to where they're supposed to be, then it's going to accumulate, it's going to build up on the conveyor belt, and then it's going to spill over. Or if you have too much being packed onto the conveyor belt, again, you're going to have a situation where it spills over. So that's where you can think of your bloodstream. There's the sugar, and either it's not being used up quickly enough or it's coming in too quickly. And so those are the fundamental problems with having uncontrolled blood sugar and uncontrolled diabetes and all the complications, right? So how do we tackle this problem? And this is where the BEAM blueprint that I created, that 4-step framework comes in. And essentially, 4 things you can do, and you can do them in any combination. And the point about it too is that a lot of people feel restricted, like, oh my goodness, I can only do this, this is the only way. But the thing about having a 4-step framework is that you can mix and match depending on what is going on in your life at that point in time, right? So B, burn more sugar. So, right, so how do you burn sugar? Well, the common way, of course, is movement, exercise, right? Using your muscles. And maybe you might not be able to use your muscles, but if you have focused in life on actually building and keeping strong muscles, that means at baseline, you have more tissues, healthy tissues in your body to actually burn sugar at baseline, right? So burning sugar is one way to keep utilizing the sugar that's coming into your bloodstream, right? So movement. And then there are other ways to burn sugar. Some people might remember videos on the internet with people getting cold plunges and things like that, because they're generating a type of fatty tissue that can burn more sugar just at rest, right? So burn more sugar is one way. But not everybody can exercise. Maybe some people are paralyzed, whatever, they have bad arthritis, they can't move. So eating less sugar is another way. Now, this is obviously, like I said, sweet things, but just recognizing, I need to be more detailed or diligent about where else I might be getting sugar. Am I getting sugar from starch? And recognizing, hey, starch is actually sugar, glucose molecules linked together. And as soon as you get that starch into your bloodstream, especially if it's very simple and there's no fiber, it breaks down and you get pure sugar in your bloodstream, right? So starch being one source. And then learning over time that, okay, there are other names for starch on food labels: modified cornstarch, modified potato starch, maltodextrin, a big one as well, right? So learning bit by bit that, these are all the other sources of sugar. Dairy, another source of sugar, unrecognized, because milk is not necessarily sweet, right? Well, I mean, if you have a trained tongue, you can detect that it's sweet, but recognizing that the milk sugar is actually half glucose and half galactose. So when you're drinking milk, you're getting 50% glucose, from the milk sugar itself, right? So that is another unrecognized source of sugar. So eat less sugar, then absorb less sugar. So sometimes you might, want to have your cake and eat it too, so to speak. I know this is diabetes, I probably shouldn't say cake. But anyway, sometimes you might say, okay, this is a celebration. It's Thanksgiving, it's Christmas, it's a birthday. So I do want to knowingly have this dessert. But then if you know that, hey, yeah, you can occasionally choose to have something sweet, a dessert, but you're going to have it in a way that you soak less of the sugar from this dessert into your body. So you absorb less sugar. And that is where fiber comes into play. That is where the other nutrients in your food, we call them macronutrients. So in addition to carbohydrates, we have the fat and the protein. And so having a more balanced, rounded meal will come into play in terms of helping you to soak in or absorb less of the sugar that you do choose to eat into your bloodstream, right? And then the last one is to make less sugar. And this, like I said, is the overlooked one, where because of stress, the body produces the stress hormone called cortisol, and that actually tells the body to make more sugar, make glucose. And this is one, I believe, from taking care of my patients and so on, is one of the key drivers of continuing glucose, because of continuing high blood glucose levels, because you're doing everything, but there's that lingering stress nowadays in life. There's financial stress, there's family stress. Sometimes people have autoimmune conditions where they have lingering inflammation in their body. Some people have lingering chronic infections, chronic hepatitis C, hepatitis B. These chronic infections are chronically stressing the body. And year after year after year of all this stress, it affects you in terms of the cortisol, the stress hormone, and then you're chronically trying to fight this production of sugar in your bloodstream, right? So recognizing those 4 reasons for high blood sugar, and then you can tackle them one by one, burn more sugar, eat less sugar, absorb less sugar, and then make less sugar, right? So that's the Beam Blueprint. And whenever I share that with my clients and patients and so on, it's like their mind is blown because they're, oh my goodness, like that's so straightforward. It seems it's simple. It's not maybe easy to do everything. I mean, you have to get into the habit of doing these things, but it does work to be a very straightforward framework. And then you realize, oh, life doesn't have to be that terrible or that boring. I can eat my food. I don't have to restrict. I just have to be very mindful of what I'm eating. And the main message is to eat foods that come from nature. I eat food straight from the land and sea. And I like to tell people avoid the foods from the factory, because the foods from the factory are those that are going to have excess amounts of sugar. They're going to have all the refined starches, and you will have no control over the amount of sugar you're getting from those foods compared to those that you will prepare. It takes some amount of work. Yes, you have to get into, learning how to cook and so on and so forth. But the thing is, once you get into a habit and slowly but surely make the changes, then you're able to have the power to control your blood sugar. And then with you taking the power, you feel more confident in what you're doing. You feel more hopeful. And there's nothing better than hope for somebody with diabetes or any medical condition for that matter. But when you have the hope and the power, it doesn't have to be making an appointment to go to your doctor. You don't have to wait for somebody to give you a prescription or to tell you this or that, right? There's no complication with doing these simple things: burning more sugar, eating less sugar, right? When you really know what to look for on your labels, absorbing less, because you're going to have sugar, but you're going to put in a little protein, a little fat, healthy fat, right? And you're going to definitely include fiber. You're going to have a variety of colors on your plate. You're going to have a variety of textures, because the more of these things, and then you can have whatever food you want, because you're minimizing those foods from the factory. So you don't have to worry about overeating, because eating natural foods will help you self-regulate, and then even want less snacks or fewer snacks, because you're actually filling yourself when you do eat, right? So I know some people think, well, yeah, that's all well and good, like to say, you can do all this, but with this framework, I've had clients and patients, in just 3 months, decrease their A1C. I remember this lady starting to cook at home with her husband. She started to have vegetables, all her meals. She didn't really The only thing she stopped was sodas, but other than that, she was including more things, and she included more vegetables, just having more of the fiber-rich vegetables with her meals. She was able to decrease her A1C from 13% to 9%, and she did this in less than 4 months. And this was such a shock to her doctor and her nurse that they thought they mixed up the samples. They're like, there's no way this could be your result, right? But it's just these simple steps that she did, okay? She didn't necessarily do that much exercise, but like I said, you can sometimes maybe only do 2 of the steps or 3 of the steps, right? But you get massive results. Another lady who I worked with, she was able to lose 10 pounds in 3 months. She decreased she had a lot of like swelling. And so after many years, she was able to take her rings off her fingers. And she said she cured her reflux. She had bad heartburn. And because of employing the steps in the Beam Blueprint, she was able to get those things on. And this is a lady who had lap band surgery, weight loss surgery for her diabetes. And even though she had that, she was at a kind of a standstill. So when she realized, oh, I can just make these little changes, and she was able to do so much more, right? So, and then some people might say, okay, well, yeah, I can do it, but like I have to work, right? I have to travel for work. But when you have a system and you specifically know what it is you have to eat, it makes it so much easier if when you travel, like you know what to choose, you know what kinds of restaurants to eat at, right? Ethnic restaurants have more vegetables. You know how to better look at a food menu to see, okay, yeah, I want to make sure that I'm not going to start with bread, right? I'm not going to start with dessert. I'm not going to start with a sweet drink. I'm going to prime my stomach so that I have fiber on board. I have protein on board, right? So that I soak in less of the sugar that might come in from whatever else I might choose to eat afterwards, right? And then, or maybe you're staying in a hotel that actually has a gym, so you might say, okay, yeah, I'm going to go and try and burn it. I'm going to be eating a little more sugar because I don't have control, but I'm going to try and burn more sugar by just taking a little 5-minute walk, right? So you don't even have to go to the gym. So it really empowers people just having this system and understanding these steps and knowing that, oh, it doesn't have to be all gloom and doom and restriction and boring, tasteless meals, right? So, I just kind of want to share that with people to, the listeners for everybody to realize like there's hope, right? It's not like it's in your hands. Like the power is literally in your hands to do these things. A lot of that times people try too many things at once. You want to just try one little thing, you change one thing at a time, and instead of thinking about restriction, try to add things, right? Add your fiber, add more protein, add the naturally occurring fats in foods rather than the fat-free everything. Choose natural foods from nature. Add more of these wholesome foods. You will satisfy yourself. Your body blood sugar levels will be a little more stable. You will be less likely to take the snacks, the candy as pick-me-ups because your mood and so on will be stable and your energy levels. And then overall, you will see changes which will happen quicker than you would imagine. So I hope this empowers and gives people hope, everybody who's watching this. And